everybody, and welcome to an emergency pod, the first PHLY Eagles Podcast, emergency podcast. Wulf, Zach Berman in familiar confines here, back in our homes. We just wrapped up the regular Tuesday show. We talked to Brian Baldinger about Lane Johnson. He gave us a bit of a scoop, and then we get in the car, we're driving home, and the Eagles break their own news. Julio Jones, who we all remember from not being able to get down inbounds in the link, is now a member of the Eagles. Zach, what do you make of the news? And nice to see you. Character still counts. It's good to see you.
Great to see you. You added some new art. We can unpack that later this week. But this move itself, I like it. Now, you know me. I'm seduced by big names. I'm seduced by form, and Julio.
And we know that you are easily seduced.
Julio Jones is the second best wide receiver I've ever seen play, or third best, after Randy Moss and Calvin Johnson. So
in person or just ever?
Just like my list of wide receivers. Okay. I'm a sucker for Julio. I understand you're not getting 2015 or Julio Jones, and he hasn't really been productive or that productive since 2019. But he doesn't need to be the Julio Jones from 5 years ago. What he gives you is a veteran, like reliable receiver between Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown. It's not as if he's taking targets away. You look at this as an upgrade or potential upgrade over ALLCITY Zacchaeus. He gives you size in the red zone. I know he hasn't been a prolific red zone receiver, but you got that size. He's known to be a good route runner. He has a connection with players on the team, with A.J. Brown, his teammate in Tennessee, with Devontae Smith, who I believe he knows from Alabama. So I like the move. It's such a low risk thing to do right now.
Yeah, I mean, let's fully temper expectations. He is 34 years old. Last year with the Bucks, he played in 10 games. He had 24 catches for 299 yards.
With Tom Brady as his quarterback too. So.
With Tom Brady as his quarterback on 43 targets. The year before in Tennessee, when he was playing with A.J. Brown, 31 catches for 434 yards. Again, only played 10 games. The year before that, he could only play 9 games in his final year with the Falcons. So you were getting a shell of the guy who is in your mind as one of the best receivers you've ever seen. All of that said, there is the also the tenor of like the Ndamukong Suh signing last year, where it's like, okay, we need to add a guy who's the biggest name on the street that we could add. Like let's make a splash and win the headlines. However, I think that this is a move that, in theory, makes sense. And the reason I think that is we have talked about, they've been sticking in 11 personnel, and they're just not getting enough out of Quez Watkins and ALLCITY Zacchaeus. And I think the biggest thing that Julio Jones brings to the offense right now is that he's a guy who Jalen Hurts might be willing to throw the ball to.
Okay. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Point there. Yeah.
Like, if we cannot just be affording to waste an eligible receiver like the Eagles have been doing with Quez Watkins and ALLCITY Zacchaeus, aside from like screens and the touchdown that Jalen Hurts threw to Zacchaeus in Tampa Bay, like there just hasn't been a lot of throwing to those guys in the context of the offense, aside from like pre-planned plays. And so if this is a guy who Jalen Hurts is going to be willing to throw the ball to, then I think that adds enough of a different dimension space-wise to the offense that could matter a little bit.
That's fair. And we've discussed third wide receiver going back to the offseason as an area where the Eagles could upgrade. And I'm not suggesting like this is a major upgrade, but when you're on, it's October 17th, okay? When you're at this point in the year, if you're not going to make a trade, if you're just simply going on the street, I mean, in theory, a 34-year-old receiver who is 16th in the NFL in receiving yards, like doesn't have much of a learning curve, right? He knows how to run routes. He knows how to fit different spots in an offense. And again, he's the 4th or 5th target here when he's on the field. I mean, behind the top 3 and DeAndre Swift, right? So based on that, if you're looking at it, all right, would you rather have ALLCITY or would you rather have Julio Jones? I might say Julio Jones.
Yeah. Now listen, I think like the reasonable expectations here are that he's going to catch like 15 passes.
Sure.
And for like 150 yards or whatever it is. Like I think realistically, this is not going to be a big deal. However, I also think we have talked about how delicate that personality dynamic is in that locker room, right? They didn't add a wide receiver in the draft. They didn't add a guy who could potentially change the dynamic there, because I think they are very, very aware of the dispersion of targets and knowing that AJ Brown wants to get his, and Devontae Smith wants to get his, and Dallas Goedert wants to get his, and you can't really add, like they could have drafted Jalen Hyatt in the third round in the shadow draft. That's who I had them taking. But if you draft a guy like Jalen Hyatt, he wants the ball too. With Julio Jones, in theory, again, it makes sense because he's not a guy. He's a guy who Devontae and AJ Brown are going to respect. Right? It's not like, oh my God, why are we throwing the ball to Julio Jones? And obviously, presumably, Julio Jones is coming in here with the expectation that he is a bit player. He is not coming in to expect the ball. And in theory, it's still a bit of an upgrade on that spot.
You're correct there. And to that point too, if you brought in someone else, there might be like a personality clash. I don't want to say personality clash.
Precisely.
But the word is like Devontae has admiration for Julio Jones. They have the Alabama connection. We know AJ Brown has that admiration for Julio Jones, pushed for Tennessee to trade for him. So you're getting like as agreeable of a third receiver here that you can bring in off the street.
Yeah, and again, most likely he plays like 3 games, gets hurt, and that's the end. That's the end of it. But the upside swing, I think, makes sense. It's a little bit. Like, what's the most Howie Roseman move he could have possibly made? This is it, but it also makes sense on paper, I think.
So between Ndamukong Suh, Robert Quinn, Golden Tate, which contribution is this most comparable to?
Oh, I mean, I think it's definitely Ndamukong Suh of those 3.
Okay.
But it could be, but I mean, it's not Robert Quinn because the cost is nothing.
Exactly.
I think you're hoping you can get the wide receiver version of what they got from Ndamukong Suh, which was, not even as much as they got from Linval Joseph.
Yeah.
It's also not like, he's probably going to be playing even when he's healthy and integrated, like 15 snaps a game. Like he's not like the Quez Watkins speed dynamic. Now he's going to be out for 4 games, or three more. Like they're still going to need that when he returns. But if it was like, okay, what happens if Olamide Zaccheaus goes down and all of a sudden we got to play a lot of Britton Covey? I think, Julio Jones makes sense.
Do you think the red zone thing factors in here? Do you think that matters?
I
lost you.
Classic dynamic.
Yes.
That's a throwback for the old school sickos. I think that I don't think the red zone thing is a big deal. I don't think that's why they're making this move. I think it's not like they don't already have options if the idea is to just throw the ball up to a guy, like that's what AJ Brown does. That's what, in theory, Dallas Goedert does. I think they're trying to solve that in a different way. I don't think that this is like, okay, here's our red zone weapon.
Agree, but I think I'd rather have Julio Jones in confined space than Olamide Zaccheaus.
Yeah. Now, another move reported since we last spoke. Speaking of all-time greats, it sounds like our old friend Josiah Scott is on the way back.
Yeah, I thought that would be the emergency pod, the Josiah Scott one. What would your reaction have been if I texted you and said, "You want to do a Josiah Scott emergency pod?"
I would have said yes.
Okay.
I think it's nice that we get to test out this functionality. It's working very well.
I love this because this backdrop has just been sitting. I have my desk. I mean, you haven't seen my home office, but I have my desk sitting in an awkward spot in the room specifically for the backdrop. So if I haven't been using the backdrop for the past 5 weeks, it's like why is the desk sitting here? So I'm thrilled.
How are you supposed to remember that character counts and that you work hard and be nice to people?
And all these books behind me, yeah.
Specifically underdogs.
Yes. So this is awesome for me. And I hope there's more emergency pods. I have a certain adrenaline going here. I like it. I was driving home a little faster than I typically do.
All we ever hear about is how fast you're driving, Zach. It feels like that is the typical speed. You know what? This goes to you. This is you are not what you are at your highs and lows. You are what you are every day. Every day you're driving fast.
I'm not. No, but I was. I mean, I was at a light tweeting some intel because my first tweet was the Eagles signed Julio Jones.
Oh,
right?
man, Sheila's going to be furious.
Yeah. No, but I was at the light though. Okay, at the light. But to the Josiah Scott point, it makes me think that Bradley Roby, there's probably concern there injury wise for Bradley Roby. Would you agree?
I would agree, and also remember that Josiah Scott. Now this was a different defensive coordinator, but he spent some time at safety over the past couple of years, so that could also be a situation where he is in the mix as somebody there.
True, good point. And we all remember that training camp last year, right? When he was kind of viewed as both.
We all remember that.
We all remember that. Josiah Scott, famously an Eagles fan growing up, and when his brother went to Mount Union, right?
Both of his brothers went to Mount Union.
Yep.
I think that this is probably not a good. I mean, Josiah Scott was totally buried on the depth chart in this summer. Zach McPherson and Mario Goodrich both elevated above him as the backup nickel. I think this is probably like a reflection of how dire the state of the secondary is for the Eagles right now than something like expecting him to bring something different to the table. But he's a guy who knows the scheme and can be sort of plug and play as an emergency option. It's probably a bit of an indictment of like Tristan McCollum and the fact that Mekhi Garner got elevated over him, but we're talking really like low level of the practice squad depth chart right now.
Fair enough. Well said. I think that slot cornerback is a spot where they just don't have the depth.
What do you think of the Mekhi Garner cameo at the end of that game?
I mean, I didn't have strong feeling on it. I think he showed some promise this summer, and I like the fact that they're putting him at safety. I think there's something to build upon there. I didn't think it was horrible, but it was a very small.
Yeah, I mean, he was untested. It was such a meager passing offense they were going up against. Then it was hard to draw any conclusions. But I think it's interesting that he was in the spot.
Seems like you have a strong. Well, they had no one else to put there.
Well, I know, but he was the one that they chose to be their break glass in case of emergency guy.
Good point.
All right, who do you think is going to be like the most excited to meet Julio Jones as a teammate?
Most excited to meet Julio Jones as a teammate. So it's their first time meeting them. Or just like, because Brandon Graham would seem to be excited seeing anybody. Okay.
True.
I'm guessing Reed Blankenship.
Reed Blankenship. Okay.
Reed Blankenship, for those
Atlanta area guy.
Atlanta area? No. He's from Athens, Alabama, and he is
Atlanta area.
He is a huge
in the South.
He was a huge Alabama fan growing up. It could be a good story on all PHLY.
Give it away.
Some of these days,
all those beats are listening.
He has to get healthy here, so I can talk to him. But his favorite player growing up was.
He's gonna re-injure the ribs, being excited to hug Julio Jones.
His favorite player growing up was Minkah Fitzpatrick. Did you know that?
I know it now.
Okay, yeah. So he was probably, let's see, Julio Jones is 34. Reed Blankenship's what, 24, 25?
A little on the older side, so I think maybe 25, 24, 25, yeah.
Okay. So right in his Crimson Tide, like fanaticism, probably, when Julio Jones was playing there. Julio Jones, I believe, is from Foley, Alabama. I don't know where Foley is relative to Athens, Alabama. If anyone knows
it's in the Atlanta area.
What's that?
It's in the Atlanta area.
If anyone here knows the geography from Foley to Athens,
I'm defining the area here as like what's the local NFL coverage game they would have gotten. They all would have gotten Falcons games.
Yeah, Bo knows his way around Mobile, but he doesn't know the Foley to Athens route.
That's true.
Yes,
that's true. All right, give me.
Who do you think's most excited?
I mean, Reed Blankenship's a good answer. I feel like Slay will be excited to have him as his teammate. He's going to have some stories about going up against him from over the years.
I can see that. Makes sense. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll catch up with
over under 200 receiving yards for Julio Jones as an Eagle.
Okay, so it's they're going into week 7. All right. They've played 6 games. Okay. So 200. So I'm going slightly over.
Jason tells us that Foley is on the Gulf Coast and Athens is way up north near Nashville.
Okay. So
you're taking over or under? I'm sorry, I missed it.
I'm going slightly over.
Slightly over. Okay. I think the odds would be on under, but no reason to be a buzzkill.
You want to play? Should we place We should bet lunch somewhere by the studio.
Well, you know what we do have to circle back on, Zach, is the predictions we made before the season. Not only did I hit the Eagles lose to the Jets for the very first time in history, which has never, ever happened before in the history of the world. I also hit the Eagles are going to bring back a player from their past. Josiah Scott is here. I'm crushing it.
There you go. I was in an odd headspace during that one. So, yes.
When are you not in an odd headspace?
I'm just thinking about these moves. I'm trying to channel my inner Howie.
Do you think Howie's like proud of this one? You think this is like he's walking around with a little strut that he signed Julio Jones, or do you think he's treating this as like just a bare bones signing?
I think he's getting some of those congratulatory texts that he got for the JJ Arcega-Whiteside pick.
Yeah.
Look, I think he's probably happy to get a guy like Julio Jones in the building. I think it's always good to have Julio Jones in your building. So Julio Jones is one of the coolest players during my time covering and watching the NFL.
You think so?
Oh yeah.
I don't think because he was so quiet for the most part.
And he's just so smooth as a player.
But he's like way less cool than Randy Moss, for instance.
And it's a great name too.
Yeah, that's true. I don't think of him on the cool side. Like I think of him more as like a quiet assassin.
Well, it takes one to know one, Bo. Ash says Howie's trying to overshadow the Phillies. 20 years ago, that would have been the suggestion.
Even 10 years ago, yeah.
Yeah, I can tell you now there's a lot of love between the Phillies and the Eagles right now. From the ownership level down to like the player. I think
Did they show on the broadcast the Kelsey brothers there last night?
Well, I mean, I saw, they showed, it was all over social too.
Okay. Yeah. Jason chugging some beers.
Yep.
That was the biggest disappointment from the Eagles' loss to the Jets, I believe, is that, Nick Castellanos had made the drive up to MetLife Stadium so he could party in the locker room with Fletcher Cox to return the favor, but unfortunately rebuffed. Yeah. I don't think we spent enough time on that last week, on the oddness of the Fletcher Cox being in the celebration and by all reports, just talking his way in without, like, he was not supposed to be in there.
Yeah. He had. I spoke to Fletcher on Friday, and it took him a while to get the champagne out of his beard. So I've never had that problem. I've never had a beard. I've never had champagne in it. So,
what about on your head? Anybody like pour champagne on you?
I don't think I've ever had champagne on my head.
I'm surprised you've never had a beard, Zach, because it grows so quickly for you.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm not surprised. I know who you are. I know that you would not.
Yeah,
you would think that was somehow unbecoming of a serious working person.
Well, that's almost precisely what happened. Was we started doing the video pods in 2020, and I had to shave much more regularly. So,
okay, well, that'll do it, I guess, for this emergency podcast. Julio Jones is an Eagle. What do you think Jaylen Mills thinks about this, Zach?
I think Jaylen Mills is pretty frustrated that the Patriots are 1-5, but I think he's probably, is that what they are? I think they're 1-5.
I think Jaylen Mills might lead. I could see the Eagles trading for Jaylen Mills.
Oh, that would be, Jaylen Mills was one of my favorite players to cover. And they can use another Jaylen in the locker room, couldn't they?
That's right.
That'd be a good story. Yeah. Jaylen Mills is named after Jalen Rose. I know that.
Okay.
I'm talking to his mother. Yep.
And since you've talked to his mother,
I like Jalen. I like him. So
okay. All right. We will be back, Zach, on Thursday for a regular PHLY Eagles podcast Thursday afternoon. But unless the Eagles sign somebody else, and we do another emergency podcast. So it was nice to fire up these old backdrops, these old muscles. Lots of people excited to see the triangle door behind me. So that's exciting. So
yeah, it's good to have this for the off season too, right? Because when there's a big move, when there's a move that when Howie decides to get a little excited, at like 4:00 on mid-March, and 76 is all backed up, we can get right in here and do it right away. Do it in real time.
And as people are saying in the comments, make sure you hit the likes, make sure you evangelize about the show, all that good stuff, and give us some reviews, and we'll talk to you later. So for Zach and Julio and Allie. I'm Bud. We thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. We'll talk to you on Thursday. And as always, we love you.
We all silly like the mayor.